Shadow Fleet seized. Why this tanker? Why now? I'm Grim. This is your Grim Dispatch for the morning of December 11th. The Navy just seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. Trump calls it piracy prevention. Maduro calls it piracy itself. But the real story is sanctioned oil. Why it is sanctioned, where it goes, who profits, and why this particular tanker was seized while dozens of others continue to sail free. So sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry began in 2019 after Nicolas Maduro's disputed election and violent repression of his opposition. The United States targeted the PDVSA, now that's Venezuela's state oil company, accusing it of corruption, money laundering, and funneling cash to terrorist networks. By 2022, sanctions had expanded to tankers and operators tied to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and Hezbollah. Now, these networks used Venezuelan crude to finance operations, moving oil through disguised fleets. And in 2025, the Cartel de los Soles, a military cartel inside Venezuela, was formally designated a terrorist organization. And that designation made Venezuela's crude not just dirty money, but terror money. The PDVSA once produced 3 million barrels a day. By 2025, that output had collapsed to roughly 1 million barrels. Sanctions cut off access to U.S. refiners, forcing Venezuela to rely on shadow fleets. Now, Treasury reports show billions have been laundered through offshore accounts, with oil revenue funding repression and military patronage. Sanctions were designed to choke Maduro's regime, but loopholes and carve-outs kept the oil flowing. And despite the sanctions, Venezuelan crude keeps moving. China is the lifeline buyer, absorbing more than 600,000 barrels a day at steep discounts. Cuba receives around 3,000 barrels a day of fuel oil subsidized to keep its economy afloat. And other Asian buyers, including Malaysia and India, take disguised cargoes via ship-to-ship transfers. Russia supplies dilutants like naphtha so that Venezuela can blend heavy crude for export. And in November of 2025, Venezuela exported nearly 967,000 barrels a day. China pays roughly 30% below market price, saving billions annually. And Cuba's subsidized fuel keeps the lights on in Havana but deepens dependency on Maduro. Russia profits by selling dilutants, enabling Venezuela's heavy crude to move. The shadow fleet is a parallel economy. Ships operate outside normal rules. They spoof GPS, broadcasting false positions to appear in different waters. And they change names and flags, sometimes 3 or 4 times in a year. They hide ownership through shell companies in the Marshall Islands, Singapore. They swap cargo in open water to disguise the origin. Analysts track around 40 shadow fleet tankers in the Caribbean. The shadow fleet is a parallel economy. Ships operate outside normal rules. They spoof GPS, broadcasting false positions to appear in different waters. They change names and flags, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a year. They hide ownership through shell companies in the Marshall Islands and in Singapore. They swap cargo in open water to disguise origin. Analysts track around 40 shadow fleet tankers in the Caribbean. Insurance companies blacklist them, but they sail anyway. The seized tanker, the skipper, was sloppy. It sailed under a false Guyana flag, openly left Venezuela's Jose port, and carried 1.1 million barrels bound for Cuba. That made it a clean case for interdiction. Other tankers are tolerated because they operate more discreetly or are tied to carve-outs like Chevron and other majors. Over 30 other sanctioned vessels were in Venezuelan waters at the same time. Chevron operates legally under Treasury licenses, exporting Venezuelan oil to recoup debts. Boarding a tanker is rare and risky. The United States chose one with clear sanctions trail, false flag, and direct Cuba links. It minimizes the legal ambiguity. And until now, enforcement was financial, blacklists, and insurance bans. This seizure marks a shift to physical interdiction. Trump wanted a dramatic demonstration of power, Marines fast roped onto the deck, footage released as a show of force. Maduro's regime benefits by securing hard currency. China secures cheap energy at discounts, and Cuba receives subsidized fuel to keep its economy afloat. Iran and Hezbollah profit from logistics and crude sales. Western majors like Chevron, Repsol, and Eni benefit from U.S. carve-outs allowing legal exports. Russia profits by supplying diluents. Chevron's general license 41A and 41B allow exports to repay debts. China's refiners blend Venezuelan crude with Russian oil, bypassing sanctions. Hezbollah networks skim profits from logistics and finance operations in Lebanon. This is the part others aren't telling. The United States seizes one tanker to make an example, but dozens of others are kept sailing. The sanctions are enforced when convenient, ignored when profitable. But families don't care about shadow fleets. They care that gas prices jumped 12 cents overnight in Florida after the seizure. Gasoline futures spiked after the seizure. Reflects a tighter supply. Families see hypocrisy. They see smugglers punished and corporations profit. Trust erodes when enforcement looks selective. They call it piracy. The truth is, it's shadow economics. The Navy seized one tanker, but the shadow fleet sails on, and oil keeps moving to China, Cuba, and beyond. Maduro survives, corporations profit, and families pay the price at the pump. That's it from me. Drop your take in the comments. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.